Okay, I couldn't upload the video or the code in our last class because we lost electricity right at the end of the class. So they're getting uploaded. The source code is already there. That's a bit unfortunate because I left a homework for you guys. Let me open the project. Close all projects. Okay, so we did this assignment demo and I left a homework here. That I wanted you guys to separate out the label from each line so that we can read the input. Right now, this thing fails. Okay, so all these things, they fail because it starts from here, down here. It cannot convert account number :1 into a number, and that's a problem. We know this already, that it's going to happen. So how do we handle this thing? Any clue? I mean, there are two things. First of all, we need to know what the label is, and then we need to separate out the rest and then read that accordingly. Each of these lines, they have a very specific pattern. The first thing says what the label is, like account number is the label, and after the colon we have 1. So one thing I did over here is that I assumed that they will come in serial, that the account number will come first, then the account name, the address, and the balance. For some reason, if the user switches things around, then we'll be in trouble. They put the account name first, then the account number, will be in trouble. What we know for sure is that the labels will be there for sure. So let us have a quick look at the text file and I'll show you what I mean. So, where was it? NetBeans projects, Spring 2018 Java, assignment demo, and this is the accounts.txt file. We got 4 accounts all right. What I'm saying is that for some reason, if someone takes this line, this account name line, and puts it in front of the account number and leaves everything else intact, there will be a problem because maybe the user will understand that I'm putting all these labels right. Why is it important to write them in a particular sequence? The user may not retain that sequence. Our program will crash because we'll be expecting the account number first, then the account name. Okay. So we can be flexible about that as well. Right now we're not. So what I want to do is I'd like to rewrite this part so that each time what we'll be doing is we'll be reading one line at a time. Then we will take that line, separate it out into 2 parts. The first part will be what the label, and the second part is whatever the data it is. Okay. So we need to know how to do this in Java. And that again brings us back to the previous thing I talked about, that you need to know how to use the string class, because if you have done that, then you'd know that there is a method particularly suitable for this thing. There are many different ways of doing the same thing, but the one that I'm going to use over here is quite easy to use. So for now, let me just comment out this whole thing. Right, this whole thing, I'm going to comment it out because I will write it in a different format. First of all, let us just say that we're going to read a line. We don't know exactly what's going to be in the line, and we can check readily if line is equal null, then we should break. But then we need to understand where that colon is, because that's the separator between the label and the actual content. See, for each line, I want to find out where this colon is, because the part on the left side is the label and the part on the right side is actually the data. So what we can do is we can use the index of colon. We can find that. I mean, this is one way of doing it. This is not the easiest way. See, here's a nice little method called index of that already tells us the index of a particular character, and the character that we're searching for right now is this. Is this thing clear? Now we can find out the index of a particular character within a string. Okay, so how does that help? We can find out the label by getting a substring of, here's this method, substring. See, there are some variants. One takes the begin index, so anything starting from that index to the very end gives you one part. The other one says begin index and end index. So we want to start at 0. This is where we want to start, and we will end at index of colon. So let me just print out the label only, so that we know at least whether we can get the label out of this thing. See, the labels are coming all right, because the way we are processing this is we are reading one line at a time. We read this line, then we find out where this colon is, and then we say give me a substring, which is a part of this entire string, starting from 0 all the way till this point. That's exactly how it works. Is this idea clear? The next thing that goes along with it is how we can then get the data. So what I'd like to do is do another substring, line.substring, and here we can say that start from where the colon is plus 1, because I don't want to include the colon itself. So anything that starts from after the colon to the very end, that's going to be the data. So let us test this out, that we can print this label plus, and let's use a different symbol just so we know that we're doing it right. So we'll have the account label, the whatever label it is, plus the data. And if you run this thing, so we got it right, that for each of these lines we are getting the labels out, and after that we have an equal sign, then the data. Is this thing clear? So two methods we are using from the string class. One is called the index of. Index of method finds the index where a particular character is within that string. And the second method that we are using is called what? The substring method. There are two variants of this substring method. One takes the start index and the end index, and another one takes the start index and goes till the end. So we're using both the variants, and we can get the data out in this format. So let me know, I mean, if this is clear to you. Is it? Okay, so let us try to solve this same problem in another way, using another method from the string class. We're just going to say line dot split. We want to split it into two parts using the colon character, and the output of this is going to be an array, and we're going to call this thing tokens. Tokens means part of a string, small part of a string. So we should have 2 tokens per line, and we can print them off out So this is the first token, token number 0, followed by a equal sign, followed by the second token. So each line will be split into two parts. Let us try this out. See, this one works as well. So here, this split method, what it does, you can actually give a single character, or you can give a expression that describes how this is formed. When we are talking about expressions, I mean regular expressions, which is not a topic of this course. This again goes to CSE 3025. When you get there, you'll learn something called regular expression. And after that, maybe this would make sense. For now, let us treat it as that through the split method, you can pass one character, and your string, the entire string, will be chopped into multiple parts based on that character. Wherever it finds that character, it will make it multiple parts. Okay. So in each of our lines, we know that there will be only two parts. That's why we're going to get token 0 and tokens 1, and we can print them off like this. So whether you use this method or this method, it would be pretty much the same thing. Now, let me see hands. For how many of you this one is easier? Compared to, I'm comparing this one and this one. How many of you would say this is easier? Okay, 1. And how many of you would say this is easier? 3, 4. Okay, maybe we have fewer lines over here, and that's why you're biased. But whatever makes sense to you, right? I'm not going to judge, but whatever makes sense to you, you can use that. Understand that this is one way of splitting a string into multiple parts, and you'd need that for writing many programs, not just this one, right? This is a very simple trick that we will use in other places. And since we have more votes over here compared to this one, I will go with this. Okay, and then we need to understand what did we get, whether we got a account number or account name or address or the balance. We need to understand that. Okay, we don't know that yet, what we got. So this is why we could say something like this. If tokens 0, this is the label part, right? If this equals account number, then we are dealing with account number, so we will do something like that. Is this thing clear? Because some of the lines may have account number, then we may have account name. So one easy way to write these things, like, I mean, you'd write some code over here, then you'd say else if tokens 0 dot equals account name, do the following. Else if token 0 equals address, do the following, and we'd have many such blocks, right? There's one way of writing this code, and we have seen this before. Instead of doing so, okay, let me first write this out. I think it makes more sense that way. What are the things we need? We need account number, right? We need account name. We need address. We need balance. So right now, when I'm reading this line, I do not have any value for any of these things because I've just read this line, right? Actually, this should be outside this block. Okay, so I have declared these variables, but I haven't assigned any values to any of them. Now, what's going to happen over here when token 0 equals account number, then I know what to expect. Tokens 1 will actually hold the account number. Is that right? I mean, if token 0 is equal to account number, then tokens 1 will have the actual account number. If this is account name, then token 1 will have the account name. There are two parts for each line. So what we can do then is we can say account number equal to tokens1, but tokens1 is a string, so we can't write like that. We have to say integer.parseInt and pass tokens1 just like that. Is this idea clear? So you can probably imagine that else if we write tokens0 equals account name and then start another brace and say account name equal to tokens1 and goes so on, right? So let me waste some time. I mean, it's probably a good investment anyways. So I could also write like this, that account name is equal to tokens1, else if tokens0 dot equals address. How do we get the address? Address is equal to tokens1. And finally, when we get the balance needs to be stored as, what do we write? Double dot, parse double, tokens1. All right, so we could write it in if-else format, and once we're done with this, once we have all these information, okay, only then we can create that account. Is that clear? But how do we know that we have 4 pieces of information for an account? That's a question, because otherwise I can't really create this bank account yet. So let us say we have this count data equal to 0, and every time we find each piece of data, we say count data plus plus. These are all the information that we're looking for, and we need at least 4 lines to get one particular bank account information, and otherwise it's not going to be complete, and we're not going to create a bank account then unless we have these 4 lines. So once we have 4 lines, because all these lines are equal, you see the problem. Let us just address this right away, that if you start reading this thing, this is account number 1, it says account name, it says address, and it says balance. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, we read 4 lines already, and we need to understand that if I read another line, it's going to be a different account. I need to stop right here and create this account first, put it in the array list before I move on to this guy over here. Is this thing clear? So the way we do that over here, since we have this count data, we can then say if count data is equal to 4, we have read 4 lines for this particular account, and we'd say, so this is when we create this bank account. How do we create this bank account? It's written over here. So let me steal my own code. Okay, so we have created this, and we have added that to the bank account list. Now we see a problem already, that it's complaining that account number, account name, they may not have been initialized, and Java is really picky about this thing. I mean, you could write the same piece of code in C or C++, they're not going to complain, but Java is really picky that it doesn't allow garbage values. In C or C++, you could say index and then print it out right away. Okay, it will get garbage value, and sometimes it gets 0, sometimes it gets random values, you don't know. Java will not let you declare integer x and let you print that unless you assign some value to it. Okay. Java wants to ensure that whatever you're accessing is actually a value that you have set, either directly or through some calculation. So let us put some initial values over here. It can be empty string, it can be null. Whatever fancies you, you can put in some dummy data, knowing that this is not going to get stored, but somehow this will get replaced as you're reading the lines. So if you run this project now, hopefully, see, we have managed to read at least one line, one bank account information. But we were supposed to read all the bank account information. Why do we get one only? Because what happens over here, we count 1, 2, 3, and 4, and as soon as the count hits 4, what happens? That we create the bank account. So what happens to the next line? It goes up and the count increases. Count becomes 5, count becomes 6, 7, 8. We don't do that anymore because all we have written is when count is equal 4, only then you create this bank account. You don't do it for count equal 8, you don't do it for count equal 12, but you should have had done that. Okay. So what's the other way of saying the same thing? Instead of saying count data equal 4, if I want to say that whenever count data is a multiple of 4, do this thing. When count data is 4, do this. When count data is equal to 8, do the same thing. When it's equal to 12, do the same thing. How do we say that? Yeah? Alright, that's pretty much it. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. So yes, I think you were on the same in the right direction. That we have to look at the remainder. That whenever we divide by 4, if this is equal 0, then we can create a new account. Okay. So let us try this one more time to see whether we can get all 4 accounts. But because previously we only got 1 account, see now we got all these accounts. Okay, so that's how it works. Another thing, I mean, we have done this before, this if-else construct, we know this already, but there is actually a better way of doing this thing that is particularly suited for this, because you have to check this, then you have to check this, then you have to check this. But we can actually create a switch, and whatever case it matches, it will just jump right there. So that's a little bit efficient, and it's also easier to read in terms of code. I mean, this is something you'd have to debug to understand that whether this is right or not. So the way we write this is actually very easy. I'm going to keep this over here so that we can compare these two things. We're going to create a switch on the first token because we are going to match it against the different cases. The cases can be account number, and this is actually tokens. So what do you do when the case is account number? You do these 2 lines, right? So that's what we write. And then when is the time for case account name? Okay, that's a mistake. What do? We do these 2 lines. Okay. Now the way switch cases work is that it's like going from top to bottom, and if you don't stop it over here, it will do whatever it has to do for account number. It will also do it for account name. We have to separate this out. Anyone knows how we do that?
Yeah.
Great. So we have the same construct in C as well with switch cases. We have to break them, right? As you're done with one case, you break that and you go for the next one. So this is going to be address, and we will have one final case which is for the balance. I'm going to copy the code. Okay, so we will get this part and put it over here, and then this guy goes over here. Now let us fix the indentation and everything. And there should be, it's a good practice, a default case which shouldn't happen over here, right? I mean, each of these lines, when you go through them, it should actually be account number, account name, address, or balance. It shouldn't be anything else because we're not reading any such thing. So this is a good place to put a error message. To say incorrect entry, and we will break it, obviously. So this is how you write the same thing with switch cases as opposed to if-else. And for this particular scenario, switch case is actually a better construct than if-else. And there are obviously other scenarios where you write if-else, particularly if you're working with a range, right? Let me give you one example. That if I want to give the grades based on numeric values, we have anything more than 80 as A+. That's a range. Anything from 80 to 100, that's A+. Can you do that with switch case? You cannot, because you cannot put one value over here. You'd have to write case 80, you'd have to write case 81, case 82. And there's no point in doing that. Whereas with if-else, you could simply write if score greater than or equal to 80 and less than or equal to 100, letter grade equal to A+. So that's why I'm saying that there are cases, there are scenarios where you use if-else, and that's one example. And there are scenarios where you use switch case. This is better suited for switch case because you have particular labels assigned over here. So even though we can do the same thing with switch case and if else, I think I'm going to delete this over here. Well, why delete when I can just leave it as a comment? Okay. So you know that, I mean, it means the same thing, and if you'd like to do it in this way, yeah, do it this way, but probably this is better. Okay, and it should work. Yeah, it does work. And let me show you that it also gives you the error message. For some reason, let's say I made a mistake over here. See, it says incorrect entry in red lettering because we have an incorrect entry. Now, you need to decide what you're going to do with the incorrect entry and how you're going to resolve that, but that's a different story. Okay, we will find a way to deal with that. So far, we have this construct that we can read lines after lines, and every 4 lines that we read gives us an account information. We have added them into the array list. Okay. Now that we have them in an array list, now is the actual fun part, that how do we actually transfer that over here? How do we show all the bank accounts over here so that we can click on a bank account and the relevant information gets displayed on this side? Okay. That's what we need to do. What was this? Yeah, in terms of JavaFX control, what do we call this? List view. All right, so we have a list view, and we need to populate that with all the bank account information that we don't. Okay. So if you look at the setup we have, in line number 33 it says private list view, and within angular brackets it has a question mark. A question mark says it can be anything, right? We haven't decided what we're going to put into this list view, but we actually have decided already what we're going to show in this list, haven't we? The bank accounts. We're going to show the bank accounts over here. So we are going to say that this list view is for bank accounts. Okay, so that's the very first thing. The next thing is that we have to tie the data with the view. See, this array list holds the actual data, and the view is how you show it. Okay. This is a very important distinction to make, and let me try to elaborate this. Okay, so let us look at some dummy data, show sample data, and we're going to look at a preview. See, all these things, let us imagine that these are the names of our account holders, the clients, right? So we can show the name of the client only, but then there are other pieces of information that we're not showing. We're not showing the address, we're not showing the balance, we're not showing the ID, we're just showing the name. So this is one way of representing this, and this is why this is called a view. This is what you see. Okay, this is one way of representing this thing. And when we click on it, what we're supposed to see is the account name will be shown in the text field, the account number will go here, the address goes here, and finally the balance goes here. So the form can be a view, the list can also be a view of the same data. Okay. I can give you some data, you can show it to me in a form, you can show it to me in a tabular view. There are many different ways of doing that. Okay. So what we are going to do with this, and let me see if I can show you some relevant examples as well. Ryan's computer. Yeah, let us go and have a quick look at Rand's computer. I'm not endorsing them or promoting them in any way. It's just that I know that for a fact that they have products listed on their site. All right. And see over here we got a view of Lenovo IdeaPad 320. It has the ID number, it has the price and everything. Okay. But if I go over here and look for notebooks, see, I could probably find the same information over here, but this is given as a list. It can also be viewed as a grid like this. I mean, if I had more space over here, probably I'd see, yeah, 3 columns. Okay, so these views are different, but the data is the same. How you see these things are called views. What you actually have is the data. Now, to fall back to the code that we are writing right now, list view is nothing but the view, but the actual data is held in an array list. Okay, so somehow we need to tie these things together. So whenever we add something to the array list, it gets shown in the view. That's the target. Is this thing clear? That the actual data we have read and put into the bank account list, which is the data structure, and this is nothing but the view. This is how you see it. Somehow we need to tie these things together. How do you do that? It's really very easy. It's just one line of code. You just say account list. This is the name of the view, and I think I really should have had changed this. Let me do that already. So we at least have the name saying view, account list view. I want to say that this is the view. I want to see this clearly. We'll save that and update the controller. Okay, so just a simple change. From account list, I made it account list view. The reason I wanted to do this, so it will make more sense now. We'd have to write something like this. Right now it doesn't work, but this is pretty much what we need to do. That we have to tell this list view where the items are going to be pulled from. They're going to be pulled from this bank account list, and that's it. Is this thing clear? It doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is that list views, well, let me make it bank account. List views are supposed to work with something called observable list, not with array list. So since we put our data into array list, and this guy is expecting that we put an observable list, it doesn't work. The idea for array lists are different than arrays because they can grow, right? We can add extra items at the end of the array list and it can grow. It can also shrink. I mean, we can't do that with arrays. Arrays cannot grow, arrays cannot shrink. You cannot delete anything from the middle of the array, you cannot insert something into the middle of the array. All those things are taken care of by array lists. It's a very nice data structure. Arrays are obviously nice also. However, array list is not sufficient in this scenario because what may happen that when you're running this code, when the code is live, you add a new bank account. What you'd want is that it appears into that list right away, right? The view should change if there is any change within the data structure. There should be synchronization. Okay. Just like, I mean, it's not going to be a good example because it doesn't work. Let us imagine that there is some cricket match and we can't see it live, and there's only one way to look at the score, and that's through ESPN Quick Info. Okay. So what's happening when in a tense moment, you'd be hitting the F5 button every time. You're trying to refresh this thing. What if it was done in a slightly different way? That whenever someone hits a 4 or hits a 6, it sends you auto update and you see that instantly. You don't have to do anything about it. Okay. Or maybe a better example which everyone can relate to. Let's say when we are registering for courses over here, it's a huge problem over here at Southeast University, and I sympathize with you guys. But you select some courses and you hit the submit button, then you get to know that some of these sections are already taken. They're full, so you cannot have them. Wouldn't it be better when you're doing this selection, there was a live counter that you see that the count is going down, the number of available seats are going down without you having to do anything, right? Because someone else is taking up the seats, so you should see that right away. Why see that when you have made all your selection and hit something? Turns out it's not really easy to implement. I mean, we're looking into it, and probably in the next version we will have that in place. So that's the view we want to get. And array list, as you can imagine, may not be a good solution over here, because whenever something changes in the array list, this list view wouldn't know. The other option for us is to use observable list, and the name itself says that someone will observe this. Someone will be looking for changes within this data structure. If something changes over here, this view right here will get auto-updated. It will be listening for changes. It will be watching for changes. So this new data structure that we are talking about, this observable list, is very much like array list. It has all the same methods, but it does a little bit extra. It's like inheriting from array list, but adding more features to it that it can allow you to watch and listen for changes. Now, you cannot create an array list over here because this is no longer an array list. It has to be the observable list. And the way you create that is not with new, is through fx collections dot observable array list. So you just have to remember this part, that instead of creating an array list, we create what? Observable list of the same type, and we do so by saying fx collection dot this. All right, so that way we create this observable list, we set a link between the data structure over here and the actual view, and what happens is that now when I run this project, see, we have all these things coming up in list. Is this thing clear? We didn't have to do anything else over here. All right. Now here's a bit of a problem, that if you have all the piece of data shown right over here in this form, and you probably wouldn't want to have multiple lines in the list view. If you want to have them like this, then yeah, then fine and dandy. You leave it like that. The reason they're coming up like this is because we have a toString defined. And we have a toString defined, and it prints all these things like this. So instead of doing this, if you just say return account name only and not the rest, see how it looks? We only get the names, all right? And if you don't like the names, if you want to print the address only, well, you could do that, but maybe it doesn't make any sense at all, right? printing the name or the account number along with it makes more sense. So I could probably do something like this: return account number plus a colon and maybe the account name. See? We got the account number printed, and along with that we got the name. So if someone's searching for a particular account, we can possibly locate what we are looking for, and then we can click on it to get the detailed information. At least right now I see all these things over here. Is this thing clear? Okay. So in terms of an example, let me show you this. If we go to my.ecu.ac.bd, which probably doesn't work. How wonderful is that? At least this guy works. Oh, I wanted to go as a coordinator. Yeah, save that. Okay, that was a bad example because I can't even log in as a coordinator. Some other day perhaps, right? It's not my day. Yeah, well, probably I'm still a coordinator. I don't know what happened with that. Maybe some network issues. We'll look into that. Now, the problem over here, if you fix it like this, that you can print the account number and the name and not do any of these, we will have a little bit of a problem elsewhere, that we have written a piece of code that saves the data, right? Handle create action, and over here you'd see that we write bytes and we use the toString method. So if you create a new account now, what would happen is that it's only going to write the account number and the account name. Okay, so we cannot do that if you rewrite toString. So what we can do instead, public string, let's say we have get all data in this form, and we're going to put this guy over there. How this is going to help is because now instead of calling toString, we'd say get all data. So we have two different things. toString gives you a very brief piece of information. You get the account number and the account name, and when we say get all data, I get everything. The reason I need this two version over here is because sometimes when we are writing to a file, we need all the data to write. So we're going to call that. And within the list view, I don't want to show all the data. That will internally call toString. So I have two things in one place. So yeah, right now, this is what we see. It doesn't work, but at least you can see the data. Okay. So what I'm going to show now, and before doing that, let me pass this around because I'm going to forget real soon. How do we show a particular entry into the form? That's the deal right now. And for that, we have to go back to the scene builder, because we know that we can select a button and then go into the code and write on action, right? That's how it works. However, when you go for the list view, there is no such on action. So when you click on the list view, how do you write code for that? Excuse me. To do this, we'd have to handle the mouse event. What happens when someone clicks on the list view? So this is where we have a nice little method called on mouse clicked, and you can write handle list click action or any such name. Let us save that and go back to our controller. Let us make controller, and we'll have handle list click action. Okay, so what do we want to say over here? We want to find out which of these bank accounts actually got selected, right? So we have our list view. What's the name of the list view? This is called account list view. I want to know which bank account got selected, so I say dot, well, not there, dot get selection model. We can have multiple selection, we can have single selection. So get selection model dot get selected. Either I go for the index or I go for the item itself. See, I can get the bank account, which one, whatever bank account is selected, I can get that. So let me write this out. Bank account selected account equal to whatever I got from here. And what do I want to do with the selected account? Show the content in the form, right? So what I'm going to do here, let's say display data of the selected account. I'm going to call that method. That method certainly doesn't exist, but we can write that for ourselves. Private void display data, and the data that we are passing is a bank account, some account. Okay, how do we display this? We show the number, the bank account number in the number field, right? Number field dot set text account dot get where is the account number? Right here. Get account number. But this one expects a string, but we are passing an integer, so we need to convert that to string. We know how to do that. Yeah, add empty string to that. Name field should have the account name, set text. Get the account name. The S area should be account dot get address, and finally balance field dot set text should be account dot get balance, but that again is a double, needs to convert it to a string. And with that said, if you click on any of these, you can nicely see all the relevant information right here in one place. Only problem right now is that the address is in a single line because we have converted the new lines into semicolon. So I said that in the previous class that when we display this, we have to go in reverse direction, that wherever we have a semicolon, we now have to make them as new lines, because it doesn't look good otherwise. And that's actually a very easy thing to do. See, when we are setting the text, we can actually say replace all the semicolons by new line characters. So now they come in multiple lines, just as they should. Is this thing clear? So in these 2 days, we have spent quite a bit of time behind this, and we haven't done much. It's just a simple user interface that loads some data from where? From a text file, and shows us over here in the list, and we can click on the list and get the item over there. We can also create a new entry, hit create, and it gets saved into the database. Not the database, the file rather. But this is a start, right? So what we want to do from here, and maybe from this point onward, I will leave most of it to your hand. See, what we need to do is that, let's say this is a tool that a bank teller is going to use. This is not for us bank clients. Someone will be sitting at the bank and they can look at all these things. They can look at all the clients that are available, and if I need to change the address of a person, I have to search for that person first. I haven't implemented that. This is something I will leave on you guys. See if you can understand how to do it. Once you find that person, you come up over here, and then you can update the address and hit the save button. There will be somewhere a save button, and then we can save the data. If it's about creating a new account, there should be a button over here. Upon clicking that, I will have a new view. I'll have an empty view where I can fill in the data, hit the save button, and the bank account gets saved into the file, and also comes over here in this list. It happens at the same time. Okay. So that also has to happen. Then comes the actual banking part, that we have to support the withdraw, the deposit, get balance, or get statement, all these operations. I want to record when someone deposits some money, how much he or she deposited. I want to record at what particular date, at what particular time someone withdraws money, because that's what we get in the ATMs as well, right? After you withdraw money, you get a receipt that tells you that you have withdrawn that particular amount from this ATM, at what time, what date, and what's the remaining balance for you. So somehow we need to make space for that, and what you can do is you can create another tab that will be for the transactions. This one's for the bank accounts. Another one will be for the transaction. You select an account, you select the transaction type, and then you carry out the operation. So some of these things I will show to you, but in a different context. The idea is that you take this base thing, or you can start from scratch, obviously, and expand on it to finish up this assignment with reading and writing into text files. Okay. And then we're going to databases. From next class onward, we'll look into databases, how to connect to database, what are the advantages, how to read from database, how to write into database. We'll look into that from next class. But this assignment is going to be based on files. Okay, even though we'll be studying databases now, this is what you'll have to do with files. Okay. So start thinking about it. I'll give you bits and pieces of clues about how to do this thing. But it has to be quite involving. Like you'd have to support all these operations. You'd have to come up with a nicely formatted printout for the bank statements. Okay. Some of these things I will cover in class. Some of these things I'll just leave some hints. I'll leave some pointers to some tutorials somewhere else. You'd have to read that and then implement those ideas. Okay. Because only by doing something on your own, you'd only learn how to do these things. If I show how to do it in class, maybe it's not going to help at all. Okay. with that said, I think I'm going to end today's class. And we got a lab class next, right? In that class, we will have some tests related to these things. User interfaces, about reading from file, and all these things. Maybe I will ask you to implement some of these methods, like the save button, like the reset one, and something as such. Okay. We'll use this as our base code there. So I'm going to close these all. Any question, by the way, on any of these things? So I guess we can upload the video.